7 p.m. during Nationwide at 5. Preparedness is key. Secure what matters, have a plan, and remain calm when the ground shakes. Brought to you by Digital Commodities, Conrad Douglas and Associates Limited, Coast to Coast Concrete Company Limited, and the Real Estate Board.
The people's champion. Our mission is love. Our vision is love. Jamaicans for justice. The people's champion. Justice, justice for all. Justice under the law. Justice, Jamaica demand. Right to life, right to liberty. Justice, justice for all. Justice under the law. Justice, the people demand. Right to life and security. Oh, what touch.
Good afternoon. Welcome to another episode of Let's Start Justice with Jamaicans for Justice here on Nationwide 90 FM. My name is Michael Jackson, Executive Director of JFJ.
And I'm Jade Williams, Policy Research and Advocacy Manager at JFJ.
You're forgetting your title?
Yes.
I just want to keep saying thank you to our listeners, those who are joining us via radio, and of course those who are on the Nationwide YouTube platform. We enjoy your active participation each week. I'm seeing Annie Smith, welcome again to another week, and I look forward to seeing the others, news commentator, Marigold Weber.
Yes.
I don't want to forget anybody because I know there are several people who tune in each week.
Yes, sir.
And also over by the JFJ's YouTube platform, saying thank you again, and those who follow the show to win the trivia on, on our Instagram pages. So thank you so much to everybody. So we're going to be having an exciting discussion, and it's on constitutional reform. And I quite like the title, Jay, that you came up with, From Bill to Referendum, Understanding the Constitutional Reform Process, and really gauging whether or not the listeners are quite aware with what is in that bill that was tabled on December 10. And of course, we're going to be joined by Christoph Simpson, who is the chairman and first secretary of Jamaica Left Alliance for National Democracy and Socialism, LANS for short, going forward, as well as Michael Williams, who is the general secretary of the National Democratic Movement. That's NDM. And if you remember, NDM was what those in the political science arena would have said the breakaway party that former Prime Minister Bruce Golding was a part of several years ago.
Yes.
So we're going to be joined by these two.
Just to correct though, Christoph Simpson is now the Secretary General at Jamaica Alliance for Jamaica Left Alliance for National Democracy and Socialism.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. So where do we start?
Well, we have been undergoing a constitutional reform process. Our listeners should be well aware because we've spoken about it a few times now. And essentially, the process is to transition us from the UK's constitution that they handed down to us and to give us a Jamaican constitution, as our Minister of Legal and Constitutional Affairs has been saying, to Jamaicanize our constitution.
Yeah, and before we get into the topic, because I know you have your trivias and so on to give away, but just two things, Jay, two things of concern coming out of the week that was. You know, they say if America sneezes, Jamaica catches a cold. No, we know that you have a new president, President Donald Trump. And for those who are paying attention to the international news cycle, you perhaps by now would have heard that there is a stop order, 3-month stop order that was issued for foreign aid, specifically HIV funding. But what we're seeing is devastating impact across the world. Just this morning, I was on a meeting with several activists globally because we're all concerned about the implications for funding towards the HIV sector. Funding to ensure that people are aware, know their status. Funding to ensure that countries, for example, those in Africa, they get the medication that is necessary to get people virally suppressed so you can end the AIDS epidemic. And I can tell you at least 4 agencies that I know of have already issued stop orders. So in other words, they don't know what will be happening for the next 3 months. They don't know whether or not they can pay salaries. And these are agencies that are funded directly through U.S. funding. As it stands now, we're still doing a wait and see to see how it will impact, for example, other agencies like the Global Fund that would receive U.S. funding support. So we're already seeing the effects of President Donald Trump's executive orders and so on that have been issued since he has taken reign in leadership. And it is something for us to really look into, and how we can ensure that we are taking charge of our own affairs. Our Jamaican government and certainly this administration in the past few years have increased its contribution towards the HIV epidemic in Jamaica, but we are still dependent, a lot of the NGOs. So the weeks ahead, it's something that we have to be looking at carefully. Yeah. Another week that was, Jade, you know that the Joint Select Committee reviewing the Constitutional Amendment Republic Bill that was tabled, they have a Joint Select Committee and they meet every Wednesday. From what I gather from when the minister spoke last week, it would not be one of those meetings that would just be concluded within the morning session. In other words, end by 1 o'clock. It's going to be an all-day meeting. So they're operating on a tight deadline. But I am a little bit concerned about the narrative that was seemingly put forward by the minister herself, supported by Senator Charles Sinclair. Because while Jamaicans for Justice and other civil society organizations are quite aware of the constitutional reform process and have been active in that process, I'm a little concerned that the narrative is suggesting that we have almost no regard for timeline and deadlines. And let me put things in perspective for the listeners. When the Constitutional Legal and Constitutional Affairs Ministry was established in 2022, and following the establishment of the Constitutional Reform Committee, JFJ started putting its thoughts together on the entire constitutional reform in terms of our recommendations. In fact, we have a comprehensive 34-page document that has been widely circulated to the media, to the government and the opposition members themselves, members of civil society. It's on our social media pages, a 34 document that would have indicated our reform proposals on the establishment of the National Human Rights Institution, acceding to the Caribbean Court of Justice, looking at some areas around fixed election dates, expansion of our rights as is provided for in the Charter, strengthening governance processes with the right to recall, impeachment, and so on. A comprehensive document that we circulated widely in September 2023. In fact, after that was done, we presented before the CRC, that's the Constitutional Reform Committee, and you can correct me here, we presented on Wednesday, September 18. That was in 2024.
Yes, and that would have been following the bill being tabled,
the report from the Constitutional Reform Committee
informed the presentation that we made as well.
So I put in context the concern that I have in terms of what was said in Parliament. And let me say to the listeners, while the bill was tabled on December 10 and JFJ had already started putting its thoughts together, the bill is different from the report from the Constitutional Reform Committee, which means you have to focus on the bill. Having said that, however, while we're still putting our thoughts together, we are now anticipating an official invitation from the Joint Select Committee. That invitation came to JFJ's offices in my email on the afternoon, about 4 o'clock, from the committee coordinator on January 17. Now, if I get an email on January 17 after 4 p.m., I anticipate that it becomes formal or official for me on the morning of Monday, January 20. And that invitation is saying to JFJ, can you make a written submission by January 29? So I really take great offense, the board takes great offense to the narrative that was pushed in that joint select committee meeting. That is almost suggesting that we're having no regard for time. And let me put in context for the listeners as well. The extension request that we made was to the following Wednesday, February 5. So this is not a case where the organization was asking for a lengthy extension that would just see the process being derailed. We got the invitation 4 p.m. on Friday, January 17, asking for us to make a written submission on January 29, and we asked for an extension to February 5, and I think that is reasonable. I think it is reasonable. And I think we have to be careful when we're in Parliament what is said, so that we almost do not mislead the public to suggest that JFJ, one, we were not paying attention, and secondly, we have no regard for time. It was offensive, if I'm being honest. And I hope, having put all of that in context, I know that the minister said that she would consider the request. My apologies. And I hope that JFJ, we will get that letter in our inbox by Wednesday saying that our request for the 1 week extension, given the tight constraints, would be so granted, because we're committed to this process. And I hope the minister can acknowledge that JFJ is one of those civil society organizations, notwithstanding concerns that we have raised, that have been faithful to this process in ensuring that we have well-researched recommendations making to the CRC and now the Joint Select Committee. I hope that can be considered.
Thank you for that, Mikkel. We'll go straight into our right of the day for today, and it is taken from section 13.3m of our Constitution, where we have our right to vote. So any person who is registered as an elector for elections to the House of Representatives to be so registered, or to so register to vote in free and fair elections. So this allows you to register to be voted for, but also to register to vote for a candidate who is registered. We have a trivia question for today, which is, which section of the Constitution dictates the procedure for how it may be altered? As we're talking about constitutional reform, this section is very important to the considerations that are being made by the CRC and then now the Joint Select Committee. So you can send that response to our WhatsApp 2397583. You can respond on Instagram, JA for Justice, or respond in the YouTube chat on Nationwide or JFJ's YouTube channel.
All right, so we spoke about how committed we are to this process, the importance of constitutional reform, and we're encouraging the public tune in every Wednesday to that Joint Select Committee. It's really refreshing information being shared, yes. So tune in. But outside of that, we want to be looking at the timeline, public participation. So for the other minute before we bring in Christoph, because I think we have to take the break at 1:15, just to put in context for the listeners, the bill was tabled on December 10, but there is a 3-month period from when the bill was tabled to when it commences debate. That's 3 months. So you're talking December 10 to March 10. And I'm just using the absolute 10-10 right there. All right. From when the commencement of the debate to the act being passed, the bill being passed, my apologies, in the lower house, that's another 3-month period. After it is tabled in the upper house, that's the Senate, you have 1 month within which that bill will be debated and passed in the Senate. So we're at 7 months so far. Yes. Then now, from it passes in both houses, then you move to a referendum. But it can't go to a referendum unless no less than 2 months, no more than 6 months have passed. So when you look at that timeline, it's looking really tight, because guess what? We start a new parliamentary session, a new legislative year on February 12th. You're going to be having budget debates. You have some committee debates coming up. What does that mean for active and robust debate of this bill when you have a general election that becomes constitutionally due by September 3? We're going to be picking up that particular conversation, because is it feasible, and what does it mean if the government does not have the parliamentary opposition support? What are the implications for that referendum? We take the break.
Revamp your space with unique living, sleek fixed and sliding shower panels, shower systems and faucets, stylish vanities, LED and non-LED mirrors, basins and kitchen sinks, closet and storage solutions, hanging aids, and more. Available in different finishes and sizes to match your style. Transform your space and visit us today at shop number 6, 30 Dunrobin Avenue, Kingston 10. Call us at 876-755-3661 or visit our website at uniquelivingja.com to shop.
Registration is now open for Sagicor Sigma Run 2025. Register now and get ready to run, walk, and wheel for a cause. Our beneficiaries are Sir John Golding Rehabilitation Center, Father Holang and Friends Foundation, and the Kingston Public Hospital. Be a part of Sagicor Sigma Run 2025. Make sure you're there on February 16 for the Caribbean's biggest road race. Visit SagicorSigmaRun.com and register now. Sponsored by Walden, Pan Jam, National Baking Company, Reggae Marathon, Catherine's Peak, Malay Media, and Whistling Frog.
Welcome back to Let's Talk Justice. We are discussing our constitutional reform process from bill to referendum. Before the break, Michael broke down some of the timelines that we're looking at here to conclude this process. And we are currently joined by the Secretary General of the the Jamaica Left Alliance for National Democratic Socialism. I'm so used to saying
Democracy and Socialism.
I'm so used to saying just lands that I forget the acronym. What it means.
Let's not have Christoph upset with us.
I agree.
Right, Christoph? Good afternoon.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you so
we
much.
usually just go by Jamaica lands, and when we say out the full thing, we don't say Jamaica.
Okay, so Jamaica lands is quite fine.
Excellent.
Right.
So, Christoph, I don't know if you were listening, if you heard what Michael had to say about the timeline, but I'm sure you should be familiar with it. What do you think of the rush, or what seems to be a rush to get this bill to the people at referendum?
We had articulated this last year in around July, August. I think it was August when they had a town hall, they call it, in Kingston. And it was the first one they were having in Kingston after over a year of saying that they were consulting the people.
That was the one by Emancipation Park.
Yes, the one by
Okay.
Emancipation Park. And you could see a clear disconnect between the people on the floor and then the people on the stage. So the persons on the stage, the people on the floor. Where the persons on the stage are referring to the process as really just the legal formal process that has to go through Parliament as stipulated by the existing Constitution. The people on the floor are talking about a process that is broader than that. And the position of the minister is that the process has to go by the existing legal way. These are not two things that contradict each other.
Yeah, go ahead.
The issue that we have been having from day one is that there was no proper public consultation. And they think public consultation is putting together something, then putting it to the people to vote on it. Whatever went to Parliament, if they wanted to be properly inclusive, whatever went to Parliament would have had a period of proper public discussion before. And then the results of that public discussion would determine whatever actually makes it in the bill. So we skipped that step entirely, which others and I, both inside and outside of land, were worried about. We skipped that step entirely of public consultation and just rushed towards. They have a few town halls to tick the box that they had town halls. They said they consulted some people. That just meant some people went in and gave their presentation. All of that disregarded. They move forward. And they put what they want to put in Parliament, and they're rushing by the legal process without building any political legitimacy, which is different from legal legitimacy. You have to have a popular legitimacy. Yeah, this has to be something that the people want, or you're not going to have enthusiasm around it.
Yeah, because, I've listened, Christoph, to the minister. We've also appeared on, I believe, All Angles Together, where there was a little bit of a pushback that the ministry actually undertook several public consultations, and from what I gather, and I've seen improvement in public consultations, some nice engagement with high schoolers and so on. I'm not sure if that is what would count towards public consultation in the immediate. I stand corrected. What are your thoughts? Because we're getting the pushback that they have done it, and we're seeing some nice engagement. As I said, one of them made it in the Jamaica Observer, I believe, just over the weekend. What are your thoughts on that pushback?
I think the idea of public consultation and what we refer to when we talk about public consultation, we as in from that, are two very different things. And we articulated this as well. I said this publicly, I think either the same All Language episode that I was on with you, or the one, or the other one.
Yeah, it was another, yeah. Mm-hmm.
I referred to the process that they used in Cuba. The last time they had their constitutional reform thing, I think it was 2019, if I remember correctly. What they did, National Assembly drafted a draft constitutional amendment proposal. Yes. So this, again, starts in Parliament, because it's just have a centralized process starting actually drafting a document. In Jamaica's case, we never had any document circulating at all, by the way.
Mm-hmm.
It's after everything that they decide that they're going to put out a report. But they never had a document circulating, so we know what the CIC is proposing. We're just here, they're considering and disconsidering that. So Cuba, the National Assembly, put out a document. This document was distributed to everybody in the country. And even Cuban diaspora had access to this with the embassy. And they were tasked with holding public consultations. So even the Cuban embassy in Jamaica had to hold in-person consultations in 4 different parts of Jamaica for the Cubans in Jamaica to discuss the constitutional amendment, the proposed constitutional amendment. In Cuba, in every single community in Cuba, people had the opportunity to discuss what was being proposed in the constitution. And a meeting finished and people don't finish what they're saying, another one is scheduled. So I spoke to persons that participated in that process as well in Cuba. Not just the diplomats that work in Jamaica. I spoke to persons in Cuba that participated in that process. And they told me about the different tensions that they had within the different communities over some of the controversial suggestions, meaning some people supported, some people opposed it, and the type of debates that they had. The debates were not held between the people and the government. The debates were not held between politicians. The debates were held among the people themselves. So different people that supported different things made their voices heard. They went to the meetings with the copies of the Constitution, the copies of the proposed amendments, and with the highlighters, and they mark out what they want to take out, they highlight what they want to discuss and stuff like that, and they brought up what they wanted to discuss. That is how they did it in Cuba. Now, what I've heard is a similar approach can be done in Jamaica because some people can't read and whatnot. Okay, well, explain to the people exactly what you're doing. Explain to them proudly, but come and actually face the people.
But isn't that offensive, Christoph? Sorry to cut you, because while one could argue that when we were looking at the Constitution, when we were moving from West Indies Federation, internal self-government or self-rule, to becoming fully independent, one could argue perhaps at that time. I'm not sure if that comment holds in today's context.
Me neither. I didn't agree with the comment. I just found it as a way to be... It's just generally in line with being dismissive of the Jamaican people and their capacity to engage us. This whole process from the start, the whole tone of the government has been, we and our lawyers understand this better than you. This is why we want this particular system. What you're suggesting can't work because it's unstable. Like right now, a lot of people are supporting their elected president. I know that's not JFK's position, but the point is a lot of people support it.
Yes.
The government doesn't engage with that properly. The government just says that will be unstable. That's not the type of system we want. They're very dismissive towards it, and they're very hard-headed on going with what they want to go with. And they think the Jamaican people don't have the capacity to understand why they would favor one thing over another if they actually come and engage us. But there's no proper dialogue. There's no dialogue on the floor. There's no dialogue between people. So the people themselves can become protagonists advancing this constitution. So it has become people versus government. This is their process where the people are debating this among ourselves, and the government is there to facilitate what we, the people, want to advance.
Yeah.
You know, as you spoke about the process in Cuba, it sounds so comprehensive. And one of the criticisms that the chair of the Joint Select Committee, Minister Malahu Fort, would have said is that we can't wait forever. And so there seems to be a very time-focused presentation of how this needs to be done. Very time-focused. Even to say that we couldn't get an additional week to present our written submissions on the bill.
I'm not sure if Christoph was aware. As I said it earlier, we were chided, Christoph.
No, I heard when they brought me on when I was waiting to join. I heard. I was actually surprised by that. We haven't received an invitation at all, by the way. It's on a social media post that they saw that made us aware that they would be taking permission for a certain date. And in the past, what they've done with other stuff, they have invited us directly before.
But Christoph, that's the point, that I believe that they're missing. Because while we understand the legal provisions and we were guessing that they would use the 3-month window there to do the Joint Select Committee, I'm not sure, and I stand corrected, because we have been watching the Joint Select Committee since they commenced. I'm not sure if there has been anything, an open call to the public, because I don't think the minister's statement at the tabling is enough. Oh, there is no?
No, I said before yesterday I wasn't aware of a public call. Yesterday is when I became aware that there's a public call with the deadline of January 29th.
Yes, and these things are normally published in the media and so on. So I think there almost is I stated it when I tabled the bill on December 10.
What I was bringing up just now is that they've invited us to stuff before. And on top of that, I remember when we presented on the sexual harassment bill, that was like 5 years ago.
Yes.
They actually asked us if we could encourage other groups to present as well because they didn't get, in their view, enough submissions. So that they're not taking that approach to this is very strange. But something like this, it's not something you can just rush for you, because this is going to be something that really determines how things go for decades after it is passed.
Yes.
In other countries, they have a whole election for a constituent assembly to discuss the constitution, to take on that task. It's not something you can just put a few months time on. This is something that we have to do with care.
And I think, Christoph, it begs the question then, if we're just narrowing the period within that 3-month window for the Joint Select Committees, and I'm just guessing here based on this timeline, it would suggest or maybe make one take pause. How much of what is shared or recommended for proposed changes will actually be taken? I
don't confidence that much will be, but the benefit of us at least being able to, if we are to present to the committees, that those things do go on record. Even if you were just talking about is that PBCJ?
PBC, yes.
PBC. If we were just talking about PBC videoing of it, that we can refer back to and say, we did say this on next date. So even if they disregard it, at least there's a record that it was said and it was proposed. That is still important. I don't have much confidence that they would take the suggestion, but then we'd have to get into talking about the politics, which is they really don't have an incentive to make changes to the system that may weaken their power and their interests. They are defending their own interests. They're going to keep things as much as possible the way they are now. And if they're going to do any changes, it is going to be changes that keep things in their favor. Because things are in their favor. We're talking about the subset of people in the country that have safe power.
Christoph, can you stay with us? And I think when you said they, you're talking political representatives across both political parties.
I'm not talking one party at all.
Yeah. Can you stay with us for a few more minutes, please? Much more to discuss. I beg of you.
Sure, no problem.
All right, we take the break.
At the Jamaica Customs Agency, we care for our employees, customers, stakeholders, citizens, and our country. Customs cares. The temperature by the Jamaica Customs Agency is...
Both Kingston and Out West feeling the temperature at 29 degrees Celsius.
Get qualified in Stage 1 Practical Nursing in only 6 months with City and Guild certificates at IIRQ Academy, located at 32 Hope Road, Kingston 10. Start online and face-to-face classes very soon and get qualified for local and overseas employment at affordable rates. Also available 7 to 9 months international certificate and diplomas in Level 3 certificate in early childhood education, Level 5 diploma in business management, pharmacy technician, medical assistant, medical lab technician, diploma in practical nursing, and travel tourism, hospitality, and entertainment. Register this month and get 2 subjects with your course for free. Call us at 876-322-4029 or 630-1084.
All right, welcome back to Let's Start Justice. From bill to referendum, we're talking constitutional reform in the country. I'm quite excited, Christoph. I think Jade always finds my reaction to constitutional reform amusing.
Yes, I do. But I appreciate it. Someone has to have that level of enthusiasm for it.
Christoph, there's a comment in the chat from one of our listeners, and it says, we have been talking about this for a long time. This meaning constitutional reform. You should be ready. It's not a pop quiz. How do you react to those who may be saying that, we're being unreasonable? This process had started long ago and the bill was tabled on December 10. We should have known, we should have prepared.
What process started long ago and prepared for exactly what? These are specifics that matter. In our case as well, we would have to come up with a submission to present to Parliament again on the bill separate from our submissions on constitutional reform in general, which we're in the process of doing for this deadline that we did not know that they were accepting submissions by. It's not a case where we were uninterested in constitutional reform. We have been interested in constitutional reform before the government actually put out anything on constitutional reform. From August 2020, we actually had put out a document shortly before the election because it was campaign season to say what we're interested in, what policies we're interested in seeing from whichever party that would form the next government. Constitutional reform is mentioned in there. And we actually even say that, this is overdue,
yes,
but we have to take care when doing it to cope with a series of reforms that don't just remove the president, but actually take advantage of the whole lengthy process, because it's constitutional reform process does require a lot, like going all the way to referendum. Take advantage of that and do multiple things at once, including possibly just reforming Parliament itself.
Yes.
Reforming the structure of the Parliament and the relationship between Parliament and the executive. That is what we had wanted to see, and we said that from August 2020. I personally worked on draft constitutional reform proposals from I was in high school. So there are persons in lands as well that are like lawyers and so on that have been interested in this topic overall. And there are persons in lands that are interested in electoral reform in a different direction than I and some others in lands want to move in. So we've been discussing these stuff for years.
Thanks for putting that forward, because the last comprehensive report that we had was the 1995 report from the Constitutional Reform Commission. And the most significant changes that we have seen since then was the Charter in 2011, then local government being entrenched in 2015, and of course in 2023 we saw the bill that was rushed through that saw the age of retirement of the DPP and the Auditor General.
I want to make 2 notes on that. So you see, you call that year 1995.
Yeah.
More than half of land membership is born after 1995. We're not an NGO, it's not employees, it's a movement of people.
Yes,
It's a network of groups of people. More than half of them born after 1995.
And one of the things to put in context, Christoph, even for us as a civil society organization, while we started putting your thoughts together and writing a submission based on an invitation coming, they're 2 different things.
Yes, because in our proposal for constitutional reform, it is very thorough on all the things we want to change. for us to respond to a specific document put forward by the government or put forward in Parliament, that is a whole different thing. So we had our proposals in general for constitutional reform that we worked on and we submitted to the CRC.
Yeah.
Then, when they came up with, and this wasn't the CRC, when after the Prime Minister put out the job descriptions for MPs and job descriptions for cabinet ministers, we took that on as well. Why? Because that is relevant constitutional reform. If we as an organization are talking about changing those things or defining them in a different way.
Yes.
So we saw that as a part, as necessary to constitutional reform discussion as well.
Yeah.
And then they had the actual report from the CRC at the end of it. And as you know, the bill tabled in Parliament is going to be different from that in format and other things, in format and content.
Yes.
So we would have to respond to this bill tabled in Parliament separately. And all of the stuff that we said in our constitutional reform work, we couldn't put that in there because not all of it is directly relevant to what they are limiting the scope of the bill to.
Yes. Because, as Christoph, as you said that, there is a significant change in that bill that many people may not understand. And I can tell you personally, it's because I'm a student of political science. And I've listened to the words of even our former Prime Minister, Bruce Golding, because I remember he was one who championed the change to Section 49.
When I was talking about when you mentioned the year, I wanted to mention something he said as well.
Yes. But you see, there's a proposal in the bill that would make it easier to make changes in the future. Because if you look at what happened with ECJ, we've had the promise, the recommendation that ECJ would be entrenched in the Constitution. But to entrench these significant institutions, you have to go to a referendum. But you can't do everything one time in terms of legal change. I don't mean holistic review now, because I want our views to be separate on that. Not Lands and Jamaicans for Justice, but JFJ and others who may have the view that there's a misunderstanding, I believe, of what we mean by phased process. Holistic review, phased implementation. But Section 49 now, as being proposed in the bill, would see new things being included going forward without going back to a referendum. And that's significant. So in other words, you have these significant changes that require some thought. Because a single word, as you know, can make a bill be stronger or weaker. It has implications. So I just wanted to put that in context, that it's a significant change that is being proposed, but we have to look at it carefully from where we sit here at JFJ.
So that's another issue now, is that while we have been trying to put the spotlight on just how the overall system will function and on, say, parliamentary reform and stuff like that, they were trying to say that the scope of this bill right now is just to transition to a republic by changing the head of state. That is the main thing, and everything else is coming after. And clearly that is not the case. And what we noticed first, even before noticing that they want to change the requirement to change the constitution, what we noticed first was that they wanted to change the structure of the Senate.
Yes.
And we were warning that it might become similar to Trinidad and Tobago. So we noticed that first, and that is why we wanted to put that in the center. But what they always come with is, well, one step at a time. We're just looking at changing the head of state to a titular president. That is what we're doing right now, and all of the other things come after. Even when we were wanting to discuss the powers of the president and its relationship to other bodies, which they have to define in their proposal to change the type of presidency that they want. They have to define that, and they're doing it already, and it's in the bill as well. They're telling us that they don't want us to really be going on that direction for this first phase. The first phase is just the change, and whatever changes can be made to the powers of the president can be done after we get the president. It's like, no, from the start, rather than just change a GG to a president, it both literally and on paper, as in Russia literally, the idea as I understand, and this became a discussion that I had in this as well. The idea is actually to have the whoever is the incumbent GG to just become the first president. We oppose that. And she put the question directly to us if we would be okay with that. And we said,
yes.
No, definitely not. We want the first president to be an elected figure. But yeah, the how they can go about making changes to the Constitution the difference between what is really deeply entrenched and what is not so entrenched. They've made reference to these things in trying to get people to understand, or in trying to respond to people asking about why the process has to be done this way. They've made reference to those things to justify why they're doing this bill in phases, but they haven't really come to us and said, and when I say us, I don't mean land, I mean the people, and said, look, these are the major changes because of this. Usually, we need referendum to do this, but now going forward, they're not going to need referendum to do this anymore. And have the people decide. Because there will be some people that would actually agree that some things shouldn't need a referendum. It's better handled in Parliament because the process to go to a referendum for all of that not going to be worth it. You're going to have people on both sides arguing that actually.
But that's it. It's been proposed, but I'm not sure if it's understood by the people.
It's not been understood because there's no engagement with the people to say this is exactly what we're doing.
And let me say, Christopher Harper, who I personally know and admire, he did an excellent presentation. I'm not sure if you missed it, Christoph, but you can watch it back, in just breaking down what is in the bill. I don't know if the Ministry of Legal and Constitutional Affairs can even play some snippet of when Mr. Harper was speaking and do more in explaining what is in the bill to the people. Because, Christoph, Jade knows this, and the listeners, I've said it, I teach Introduction to Politics. And I explain these things to my students, and every semester it's a aha moment. But they're not watching PBC. Yeah. One of them didn't even know that TVJ was a station. And it's no insult to my student. It's recognizing that the generation has changed, and we have to ensure that while we acknowledge that they have a responsibility in paying attention, we have to bring the information to them. So I agree with you, Christoph. I'm not sure what we can do differently.
The things have to be brought to the people in general, and the people not living on TV. And even when they hear this as a news item, they're not going to necessarily understand how this is connected to their everyday life. Constitutional reform is definitely connected to their everyday life, but people are not going to make those connections just off the bat like that, because how this is being presented is, again, this process that is just full of overly legal language, and it's just something that really concerns politicians. What difference does it make if we have a president or a prime minister? It's just a name. Like, people not seen much to change, man. That's in part because they haven't opted to engage ideas for reforming the system itself. So when they themselves are putting it as, it's not really touching too much, we're keeping things as they are, but we're changing to a titular president. But the reforms that they propose are really minor in terms of what they've hyped up, right? Yeah. These smaller details now, like requiring less processes in the future. Let me not say less processes in the future. They're making some things that were deeply entrenched before. You're saying they're going to make them less deeply entrenched?
No, not deeply entrenched. It's just the process for amendment. There is a clause in the bill that would see, for example, the Public Defender Office. For example, we want that to become the National Human Rights Institution. But perhaps there is no consensus as yet as to repealing the Office of the Public Defender, the interim act that governs that body, and, broadening its scope to become the NHRI. If there's no consensus, it won't be placed in the bill right now. So to make whether the Public Defender Office or what we want to be the NHRI being entrenched in the Constitution, it would just become easier based on the proposed provision in the bill. But it's not weakening or changing specially entrenched provisions. It's just a process for amendment that is being proposed for some changes there.
What I was thinking of was in Sector Policy Evans had sent me a little briefing before. They highlighted that from Section 2226 you have some things about the requirements to make certain amendments, and if you don't have consensus between the House of Parliament, then that is when certain things go to referendum.
I want you to pick up on that for me, Christoph, after the break, if you could stay with us for another 5 minutes, because the parliamentary opposition has sent a signal that they will not support. They did not turn up to the Joint Select Committee. I want your views on that, as well as what next, given that we are looking at a Senate rejection possibly when that time, for lack of a better word, when that time comes. So we take the break.
Enough power tool, big to small. Chakama figure dig the wall. Our total tools. Lead back a figure trim the lawn. We have everything a job demand. Total tools. We rent them, sell them and fix them. Also give Total Tools a call. When I say home improvement, landscape construction, a Total Tools are your option. Home improvement, landscape construction, Total Tools are your option.
Total Tools, located at 102 Main Street, Ocho Rios, 34 Slive Road, Kingston.
And lot C6 Jacksaw, Sentence Bay. Call us today.
For over 30 years, Chris and Charles has been financing your goals, dreams, creating your great moments. Celebrate the occasion with us. Borrow $1 million, pay less than $25,000 monthly, and get 30% off your processing fees. No guarantor needed. Call 876-920-4189 or WhatsApp 876-838-9028. Conditions apply. When you think loans, think Chris and Charles.
Welcome back to Let's Talk Justice. We've been discussing constitutional reform from bill to referendum. We are joined by Christoph Simpson from Jamaica Lands. And Christoph, before the break, we were speaking to the opposition's, what appears to be a decision to cease their participation in this process. They haven't been to the Joint Select Committee and have not been participating in the process.
Well, they didn't go to the last one.
Yes, they went to the first one, yes. What are your views on that? Do you... I think it's a concern, especially for the people that they would represent, that the views of their representatives would not be shared in the forum that has been set up for sharing same. What, if any, views does Lance have on this?
Well, Lance hasn't discussed this. I can give you my views, though, as long as I understand the extent enough. Lance is... but then again, people in Lance do tend to think similarly on some stuff. Personally, I don't think it's a good approach to just stop participating. If they have a position themselves as a parliamentary opposition, even if we're not talking about who they represent, if they have a stance themselves, this is the forum to air it in, and they can say, we said this, we defended this position, and then move on. Even if at the end of the day they're going to vote against, they can still say, look, we made our position clear. When you withdraw from the process now, it's easy for persons to paint you as immature or not actually having a position they just accepted.
Yeah.
What they should be doing is having a position of their own and advancing that position. If they have a rival proposal for constitutional reform to look like, they've had time to put that together as well. So that's what they could be doing. But on that note of the people they represent, now this is into kind of how land people think. Do representatives really represent their constituents? Do they actually go and consult their constituents before they come to Parliament? I mean, the people, when MPs are in Parliament, they're not usually reflecting the views of their constituents. They sit along party lines.
Exactly.
And
Christopher, and I have an issue with that, because you have 228 councillors, local government. You have the members of Parliament. I don't know that either political parties are having dialogue at the division and constituency levels to get a sense of what people want. So the PNP, even if they have a party position, and quite frankly, we don't know the official position of the ruling political party on where they stand on the CCJ, but the leader of the opposition posed some questions, but he didn't turn up to have those questions answered. So as you rightly say, who is representing the views of the people? And for those who are listening in, no, JFJ is not involved in any politics. This is a governance issue that we're talking about, because you have representation that is constitutionally to be provided to us all. So I agree, Christoph, but you haven't seen anything like that, have you?
No, but we did bring this up in one of our appearances with the media. So when they were talking about capacity to consult in general, that's what we mentioned. That, you have MPs, you have councillors. In addition to that, if you look at the parties have the people on the ground all over Jamaica. That is how they maintain support, by the way. They're actively organized. So they have their constituency bodies, and they have their regional bodies, they have the constituency-based bodies, and they have all the way down to divisions, where they actually have the bases in divisions that have the meetings and so on. What somebody said to me is that the JLP don't have that. There was another commentator about the PNP. They have this group structure, and it has degraded now, but some elements of it are still there. But both parties, you do actually see that they have base-level meetings outside of what we say big and public. Right? So the parties may very well know what they stand for, but we were saying that same thing that they have going all the way down to the grassroots, which we know at least all the parties have, they can extend that to the people. And they could actually be building on that now, even for their own sake, to get public support, to say, look, this is the constitutional reform agenda that we're pushing, these are all changes that we want to make. And they bring this to the people that come into level. No, we're not really seeing that either.
Yeah. So where do we go from here, I think is the question, because if there is a rejection at the Senate, given that you need 2/3 majority vote at both lower house and the Senate, you know that based on government numbers that 2/3 majority vote already exists at the lower house. But at the upper house, you need at least one opposition member to agree with this bill. Based on the signal being sent by the parliamentary opposition, I don't think we can look forward to that. So where do we go from here? Because based on the Constitution, Jade, if there's a Senate rejection, what happens?
If there's a Senate rejection, it's sent back to the lower house. It goes back to the Senate for vote again. If the Senate rejects it again, then between 2 months, no less than 2 months, no more than 6 months, it will go to referendum.
And so, in other words, the referendum can happen without the opposition supporting it. But for a special entrenched provision, you need 3/5 majority of those who voted.
Yes.
To vote yes.
Yes.
That's under the current constitution, or that's what they're putting in the draft constitution as should be the new system?
Yeah, no, those are current provisions.
So in light of that, Christoph, where do we go then from where you sit?
Well, Land's going to continue to operate where we just represent the views of our base. So our interest in constitutional reform, as I said earlier, never started the government announcing a constitutional reform process. We had an interest in constitutional reform before that. When the government announced a constitutional reform process, it prompted us to put our stuff together, to consolidate our thoughts and actually put them together in a document. That's really what it did. So now going forward, whether or not this process is going to be successful, we will still have our stance on what we want for constitutional reform, and that is what we will push. Yeah. No matter which party is in power, and no matter whether they're engaged in a constitutional reform process or not, we know what changes we want to see, and we're going to advance those.
All right. Thank you so much. Any last words before we close out?
Well, this process has to be led by the people. Again, that's what we've been saying from day one. A referendum is not enough for that. And as again, I think we're going to appear on TV with Peter Estes. If the process doesn't involve the people enough at this stage, especially if you don't have the bipartisan consensus, when we reach the referendum stage, you can expect that this will be defeated.
Yeah. All right, thank you so much. That was Christoph Simpson, and he's the Secretary General of Jamaica Lands.
Yes.
All right, thank you so much, Christoph. Have a good day.
Thank you.
You know, Jade, before we go into the winnings, you know, we need to give people more winnings, you know. I just want to impress upon the listeners that this is our supreme law. And while we demand more public engagement from the Ministry of Legal and Constitutional Affairs, as well as from our political representatives, we have a duty, all of us as citizens, to pay attention. There needs to be a little bit more effort from us The Joint Select Committee meets every Wednesday, I believe, for now.
Yes.
For 2 sessions.
Yes.
All day.
Yes.
And just tune in, listen, because when you hear the debates happening from our political leaders, then we can understand a little bit more. So we're not saying that there is not responsibility and we shouldn't hold those from the ministry to greater account. But we also have a role to play. We can't just go on TikTok and just read the headliner and think that's it. We have to do a little bit more. And we're going to be doing our part here at JFJ and trying to explain as best as we can. Because, and that's why, I told you, Jade, from I heard the comment last week, I took great offense. And the late nights,
yes,
the meetings that we had to put forward our document that was done in September 2023. We have so many things doing now, and we remain so committed to this process. And we will make our submission. The Joint Select Committee can disregard it, but we're going to be making our submission by the 5th of February. We hope it will be reviewed, and we welcome an invitation to make an oral presentation. And I would say to the parliamentary opposition, if you pose questions to the minister at the Joint Select Committee, I agree with the minister, you must go back to the Joint Select Committee to have those questions answered.
Absolutely.
And boycotting is one thing, but remember you have the power at Senate to reject.
Yes.
Go to the meetings.
Absolutely.
And I'm sorry, but let me say, that's my personal opinion. That's not the official position of JFJ. I haven't spoken to the board on that. But my personal opinion is that the parliamentary opposition members should go, be a part of the process, and ensure, because if it bypasses you and goes straight to the referendum based on the timelines, you're going to have a bill being passed that may have things in there that you could have made some changes around. I can't understand it. I can't.
I have to fully agree with you on that last point, Mikhail. Personal view as well, but I completely agree. All right, so we did have a trivia winner. There was an argument in the studio during the break as to whether or not the trivia winner was news commentator. However, we have a trivia winner from our Instagram this week. The trivia question for the week was, just a reminder, what section of the Constitution dictates the procedure for how it may be altered? Section 49.
That's a monster of a section,
Yes, it is. But that is the section. We referenced it quite a few times in the show as well, so hopefully you got some tidbits about it. But our winner,
jot in pencil, Jade, to the sidelines of the
yeah, it's very
intense.
It's very dense. Yes.
Well, I was saying intense, but I'll take your word.
Well, our winner was Rayon Smith on Instagram, so we'll reach out to you via DM, Rayon, with your prize. Thank you for participating in our trivia.
Yeah. And though we have opinions on the reform process, let me say you have so many people who have dedicated themselves to this process, and we must acknowledge their dedication.
Absolutely.
The minister seems to be a taskmaster.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I can personally appreciate that process, but I think we just need to do a little bit more. Is that all right? But yeah, pay attention and be involved. I think that's the best thing we can say as we close out the show.
For sure. And keep watching our social media channels for some public education as well.
On it, because I think we need to split up some of our recommendations.
Absolutely.
All right, so that is it for today. Thank you so much, and you have yourselves a very, very good Monday. So yes. That was Let's Start Justice.
It was.
Justice, the people's champion. Justice for all. Justice under the law. Justice, Jamaica demand. Right to life, right to liberty. Out of many we are one in a Jamaica. Make it a better place for the boys and girls. The creator for equal rights and opportunities. No to unlawful detention and police brutalization. Class, gender, race or religion. We not tolerate discrimination.
To join the fight against injustice, contact us at 755-4524 or Jamaicans4Justice.org.
The people's champion.
Introducing Domus Windows and Doors, Caribbean UPVC Solutions. Now open at the Summit, 16 Chelsea Avenue, Kingston.